Hello and welcome back, and today we want to continue looking at Plex Media Server. More precisely, we want to look at Plex Media Server versus Synology's own video station application here in 2021. I want to help you guys decide which of these two platforms you should be utilizing primarily for your multimedia NAS server. But I will highlight, I said the word primarily there because you don't have to use one or the other. Of course, you can use multiple of them. I did a video with MB recently, and I'm hoping to look at Jellyfin or Gelfin, and hopefully help you guys understand that you can utilize all of them really, because they've all got their own pros and cons, but we all know that you're going to end up picking one more than any other. And a number of you, when you buy a Synology NAS, in this case the DS920 Plus, but of course there are other devices available, you end up making a choice really between their own app known as Video Station, which is arguably one of the very best applications for multimedia on any NAS platform, particularly for video of course, and Plex Media Server, pretty much the go-to home media NAS app in the last few years. It's really been developed, it's got very slick, it's got ever so slightly corporate, but it has to have been said that in terms of all the applications, to have your own multimedia server that rivals that of Netflix in terms of design, features and functionality, it's definitely one of the best out there. So although I've talked about these two programs a lot over the years, this is the first time I believe that I've ever slammed them head to head. And I'm going to go through lots of little things, pros and cons through both of these applications, and ultimately help you decide which you should go for. But real quick, I am making this video based on the idea that you have almost no experience of either of them. Chances are that you've used one more than the other, but I've got to make this video on the assumption that someone watching it doesn't know about both of them. So sometimes I'm going to tell you stuff you already know, and it is going to make the video a little long, so I apologise for that in advance. Second thing, I am utilising this in a very early setup way. They're both using the latest version of their apps, Synology Video Station and Plex Media Server. It's the latest version, but I've used as many of the default settings as possible. And what I mean by possible is both of them arrive with a huge contingent of configuration options that can be changed during setup, that allow you to alter metadata, different folders that are scraped from, and lots more information in between. So I've tried my hardest to keep this as day one as possible while still showing you features and functionality. I'm sure some of the things I'll show you, such as ones to do with digital video transmission and recordings and metadata scraping, can be configured in a number of ways by choosing different sources for information, but where possible I've kept it at the defaults. And that means I keep things as even as possible. But it has to also be said that because in previous videos I've used Plex Pass, the premium paid for service from Plex, which is about I think maybe 7 or 8 nicker a month in pounds, I am using the paid for version of Plex versus the technically free version of Synology Video Station. I say technically because obviously it's included with a NAS that you've had to pay for. So whenever I do talk about a feature on Plex that you need a Plex Premium Pass to take advantage of, I will make extra strides to highlight that. The last thing I will say is that I am using the web-based graphical user interface to show off these services, but of course you can enjoy these on mobile phones, on desktop clients. You can enjoy them with apps for Windows, apps for Mac. You can enjoy them on Fire Stick and lots of other bits in between, although I will touch on that in a little while. They're utilising the same media, directed and pulled from exactly the same media sources as well. So first thing to look at is the user interface of both of them. If we go to the main user interface of both of them, this is what we see as a login here for Video Station via the web client, although I will highlight that the user interface on the right hand side for Plex, this is the overall interface that connects to a bunch of third-party streaming services. If you want to see the user interface for the NAS, you have to make sure you select it from the list. Obviously, I've made sure not to add too much media because I want to focus on a few things here. And obviously, the YouTube AI is always a pain when you use media that already has copyright attached to it. But I'll try and keep things as tight as possible, and hopefully the video won't get pulled. But straight away, we can see that they're very, very similar. It has to be said that Plex has been around for longer than this iteration of Video Station, at least. So one might argue that Video Station has borrowed some of that UI from Plex. And again, maybe they have, maybe they haven't. But what I will say is things are a little bit more streamlined and simple on the Video Station UI there. If we flick between them, such as TV shows, on both of them, we can see both of them allow you to flick between thumbnail, title, list. Although there is that extra one for tile, where if we go onto Plex, we can go to list view, we can go to summary view. They've got a very similar layout there. But one of the first things you may have noticed is that the Plex Media Server there didn't seem to pull the metadata there for Mr. Bean. It didn't pull the metadata for Taskmaster either. None of it was pulled. Also, it didn't pull the third show. It didn't pull Black Books. And Black Books, they're readily available, already visible there on the Synology application. All of them listed there, lots of stuff, all of it on screen, showing all of that information, and lots of background information as well. We can zoom straight in, lots of metadata scraped information there as well. If we go back to, for example, something they're both sharing, we go into Father Ted on both of these. We go into the first series. We go into the first series there. We can see very similar there between the two of them. Different thumbnail, of course. They both pulled a thumbnail from within the featured movie that it's from. It scraped it from there. But if we make our way into the settings options for both of these devices to look at how each of them have pulled that metadata there in the background, we can see how both of them have gone about this a different way. So, for example, in terms of the content on both of them, so if we go into the scraping of metadata there, let's get that there in the background, not the webhooks, that's a different one. We'll go into there with the sources of that data and information. So go to libraries. We can see there it is pulling, that's the information it's pulling. There's where it's pulling it from. We can also go into where the information is being pulled from each. We go back into the NAS there on Plex. Straight away, you're already seeing that it's not quite as intuitive as one might like in order to play around with the settings. So if we go into edit there, we can have a look. And for movies, for example, we're using the Plex Movie Scanner. We're using the Plex Movie Legacy Agent. And again, this is the default settings. I've not played with these. Maybe things will be different if I played with them, but I think it's reasonable to expect that the defaults would be sufficient. We can see that the background information has been pulled from those sites. Lots of stuff there, all in the background. Remember, things like cinema trailers, as good as it is, and it is a lovely overall feature for a movie night, is a Plex Pass feature, so don't lose sight of that. Now, here on the DS Video or Video Station side of things, if we go into the movies section, we can have a look there. And again, we've selected the folder that it comes from. We can add another folder if we choose, of course, and we can change the source setup as well. But although we've got options for source generation for the metadata scraping, and remember, I've not ticked any of these, it has to be said that more advanced sources, such as using the movie database, something MB was able to do easily, you need to use a preset API key to take advantage of that. Same goes for this subtitles. If you want them automatically downloaded, you need to use already registered account in order to take advantage of some of those. Now, the metadata scraping thus far was already done on its own. It scraped all that metadata there for all of this stuff that we're utilizing. Nice and easy. It's using the video search information there, and it managed to pull all of that lovely information without any premium or sign-up services. If we go back, we go into movies, look at the amount of information it has pulled on some of these, and all of this has been automated within the app. All I had to do was point at the directory. So for example, let's say we remove the TV show directory from here. Let's go ahead and remove it. So if we go into the settings, we then go into TV shows, we then delete TV shows, click OK. That will remove it. Refresh the page. Hopefully I did that right. We'll go there. No, I've not removed it yet. No, it's still available there. It's just asking me to create a new index. So now I'm going to re-add the TV one that I've deleted. So we go into the shared folder, go into the Plex one, go into TV shows and then add it. Simple as that. We've selected library for TV shows, enable auto searching there, and again, that's using the default settings that all come with the device. Click OK. And now it's going to index that album there in the background. It's indexing it there, and we'll come back to that in a moment. Whereas on Plex, all of the options, if we go into the TV shows here on Plex, we can see that again, it didn't find all of them on those default settings. It found some information. It even found a little bit of casting information, but even the cast information only links back to other titles and shows on the NAS overall. If you go back into the TV shows here, as we can see, it's already found Black Books immediately. It's got that metadata. None of this metadata was already on the NAS. It's downloaded it and stored it locally now, which is another big difference between Plex and Video Station, the way that metadata is installed and kept on the system. Plex doesn't automatically store it in customizable directories. It's mostly default, and those directories, it will flush them or regenerate them from time to time. But if it doesn't find them, such as it did on the Matrix here, as you can see, that's not the poster for the Matrix. That's just something that's taken from halfway through the movie. Whereas if we go into here, our copy of the Matrix, there's more information here on the right hand side of the screen. We've got all this information here with regards to the casting that's only available here in these tiny little tabs on the Synology, as well as the reviews, as well as the extras and stuff here. But it's worth remembering that most of this stuff here on the bottom is part of the paid subscription service from Plex. So again, even the trailer, if you want to watch the trailer and it finds the trailer online, you're still using an additional premium service, and it's still trying to find that online. So again, in terms of the user interface, I would argue that things are a lot more intuitive on the Synology side, and you don't have to pay for that extra stuff. Although I will say that the customization options here on DS Video are a little bit more streamlined. They focus on the important ones. They focus on the ones that you care about, but customization and configuration options and making a more unique setup is nowhere near as customizable on the Synology Video Station application as it is on that of the Plex Media Server. So another thing I want to talk about, I mentioned at the beginning of the video, is clients. Both of them have applications and clients that are more readily available on the likes of Amazon Fire Stick, on Android, on iOS, and other client apps. Plex Media Server is easily available on more platforms. Video Station is available for some plug-in services and media set-top boxes, as well as, of course, mobile devices. They're one of the few NAS brands that has an app on Amazon Fire Stick or Amazon Fire TV. Again, a lovely little privilege. Same goes for Google Chromecast, and even getting one on the Samsung TV store. Something that very few NAS brands have, but they still don't have the blanket area of client coverage that Plex Media Server has. It's just available on more client applications and more client TVs and more smart TVs than those of the Synology. So in order to enjoy your media, there's a very good chance that you're going to do much better with finding the media, finding the client applications for your devices for Plex than you are for Synology. Now, Synology, on the other hand, can still play back over the network very, very easily. For example, when you create your Synology Video Station application and all the apps and stuff like that there, this does cross into the DLNA media support as well over the network. So again, you've got the media server application for your Synology, but you can also use the Video Station parameters as well to get that picked up on the network. Something that, although Plex supports, it doesn't support as intuitively, and certainly, although it will be picked up over DLNA and over the local area network, it doesn't do it in a straightforward, easy way, as you can see there on screen. Of course, I can hide the advanced options and just have it as a tick, but then you're going to click that tab and find out more about it. So again, lots more customization on Plex. It's one of the rare occasions I would say that Plex has a learning curve overall. Another thing that's worth highlighting is the user interface of Playback. Let's face it, you've come to this video, you've come to watch some videos get played. So let's go straight into one of the test files that I always use for a lot of my videos, Little Shop of Horrors. The reason I go for these generally is one, I have very key, easy day-to-day video files that are good for the Plex test, and also the YouTube bots, always fun to play with. So let's go ahead straight away on screen. As mentioned, lots more ready and accessible information on screen on Plex, but a lot of this is part of that Plex pass, whereas the information here on the Synology, although seems a little bit more streamlined, we can click view all for, pull that down a bit. It's still arguable that it's not quite as much as some people might like. So let's go ahead and click play. I'll go with the Synology and then that of the Plex. We're going to let these play in their original formats here. So again, have them playing there. They're playing at almost exactly the same second for second. And straight away, one of the earliest things I want to highlight is to do with playback quality. So as you can see, they're both playing back in the original format. Both of them are playing the original 1080p. I think it's like 1.5 megabits per second, perhaps. I know it's got 1.9 there. You can largely ignore that. But as you can see, if you try to change the configuration on Video Station, you can either do low quality, medium quality, high quality. Whereas on Plex, you can click here, click show all, and you can be a lot more bespoke on the picture qualities and the options readily open to you. Now, if we switch, for example, down to low quality on the Synology, so we'll let that go down to there. It needs to convert the file in the background. It's going to be using some utilization of hardware resources there. But now we're playing this file in low quality. But there isn't much of a clear indication about what that picture quality actually is. We can full screen it, we can small screen it, we can, play with the playback speed, play with the volume, but there's not a huge indication of what exactly is the picture quality that we're watching right now. Not that that matters, but I think it's important if you are going to take advantage of manual file playback performance in order to extend your battery life, use less data, use less hardware resources on the NAS and your client device. I think it's important to know just how much resources you're using. Real quick, I am using OBS for this recording, and it will take its toll sometimes on the performance of these video playbacks. But on the left hand side we've got play, whereas on the right we can go crazy low. So just to put it into perspective, I'm now using the NAS to not only play back the file here on the left in quote unquote low quality, but here on the Plex media server I've lowered it to a frankly comical 1.2 megabit 160p. Now obviously if we look at the resources, they're going to be up a little bit higher here, but I don't quite like the fact that I don't know what picture quality that is, and also it means that I can't take the picture quality any lower than this, which I know a number of you be like, why on earth would I want to lower the picture quality? Again, if you're accessing on a mobile device, if you are accessing on a limited data connection, you have limited power, any number of reasons, it's good to have that level of control and configuration and change. So like if I move this to 480p, and we compare the 480p transcode, generally considered slightly tricksy, I think even now the lowest picture quality here on the Synology that's being shown is still higher than that of 480p. I think they're very close, but I think arguably the picture quality there on their lowest could still be lower for some users. Audio tracks, of course, if you have multiple audio tracks, you can play with those on all of them. There's different audio streams. So go to subtitles. We can do a search of subtitles here if we choose, and then those subtitles will then be displayed here on the right hand side of the screen, whereas subtitles here on the Little Shop of Horrors playback file on Video Station is you can search for them. But again, you would have had to sign up and add one of those subscription services manually, which is less user-friendly than what I think Synology would like their brand to be seen as. If we carry on moving forward, we come out of that file. So let's cancel the playback of Little Shop of Horrors there, on both devices. We can make our way into the TV shows, and again, it's carrying on doing that metadata scraping there in the background. It's taking time, but if we go into that file there, we do the same thing with TV shows. Again, Father Dead, we go for episode 1, we select that there, we select that there. Again, a little bit more information, but not a huge amount of information there on this particular file here on Plex. But once again, this time we're going to play them again, but this time I'll try to play Plex first. Go. It's about a second between the two of them. So Plex has definitely played back faster, but it's not really fair because we are using the same NAS. So there is going to be a certain queuing system there, I think, that we have to take into account. If we make our way to the right here, we can skip the intro, something that's not really available here on the Plex side of things. And again, we can go to subtitles there, we can search them if we choose. If we've got different players or network players, they would appear there. But again, go to picture quality, we're playing it in high. It's at the transcode, it's worth highlighting. As you can see, it's going to be doing the same because this is taking advantage of HLOTS265. But if we switch this now to low, and again, same thing goes for here, we can convert to the lowest. We're going to see that Plex is going to have that lower option. It is worth highlighting, of course, as this is HEVC as a file, it's going to take a lot more work. So, yep, as you see, the spikes there are higher, but still Plex gave a level of customization in the transcoding that is just not readily available. It wasn't just that one file. But this does lead us on the subject of transcoding to one of the key advantages of using not just Video Station, but using any native first-party video playing app, good or bad. And that is because the application that your NAS arrives with will have direct access to the transcoding engine. So in the case of this Synology here, it's got the Intel Celeron chip that has an embedded graphics UHD 600. Plex needs you to have a Plex Pass account, that is the paid subscription service, monthly, annually, or a single lifetime payment, in order to take advantage of hardcore transcoding. In other words, the Make My CPU Hurt option. You're not able to take advantage of full transcoding without a Plex Pass account. The result is that Plex Media Server will not transcode files outside, take advantage of the hardware transcoding option of GPU or a graphics card unless you pay for it. Otherwise, it has to rely on software transcoding, which is a hugely less efficient means of using a CPU that's got embedded graphics to change files on the fly. Whereas if you use a native first-party app, it will have direct access to the transcoding engine on the CPU. And that isn't just this NAS or this one program, that's any proprietary video playback app on a NAS will allow the NAS to be able to transcode files with the dedicated transcoding engine or embedded graphics resources on the CPU. So, case in point, if we go into, once again, we'll go back into Pulp Fiction here. We'll use Pulp Fiction on both of these two devices. And what I'm going to do is play back this file very, very quickly on both of these devices. So we're going to go and click play and click play. I'm going to leave them to playback on both devices. And then on both of them, I'm going to do a little bit of transcoding there. Now, remember, monitoring the transcoding is going to be very, very tough on the Synology because of this low, medium, high. But let's say low on the Synology is 480p. We can flick through, it'll play back nice and easily. All of this is happening. We've all watched Pulp Fiction. We'll come out of there. CPU utilization to play back both of these files simultaneously is ebbing around the 40, up to the 40% mark now. Do bear in mind, of course, we are playing back two files on one system, which is slightly less sensible if you're going to be doing this testing, but it's good to show these things side by side. What we're going to do now is switch this one to low, and we'll see how long that takes. Give it a second. And you can see it juddered on the right hand side of the screen as it used the CPU resources. And then on the same thing, we're going to flick this server here, not to automatic, hopefully that doesn't kibosh things too much. We're going to flick this down to 480p. Now, obviously, it was quicker on the right hand side of the screen. That was evident. If we look at the resources, they're obviously spiking up. We're hitting the 60s now. But still, nonetheless, transcoding down, it's arguable that Plex was the quicker of the two. Because of that Plex hardware transcoding, I'm not sure. And also because we still don't know the parameters of this high, medium, low stuff. But if we make a switch now onto hardware transcoding in the other direction, so if we go into our 1080p and 4K media file testing, we can take a look at slightly more intense transcoding. So if we play them one after the other, we're going to first play back the 100 megabits per second H.264 file here. We're going to find the same file on the Plex Media server, and from here we're going to try and transcode this file. Due to the battery on this laptop going down, unfortunately, I've had to reattach the power, as I'm sure a number of you were watching that power figure at the bottom. Unfortunately, that means the fan on the GPU of this laptop may ramp up, so I apologise for any extra noise, but where were we? So we're going to play back 100 megabits per second H.264 1080p file, and we're going to see, firstly, how the Synology handles it. Should be fine. Should play back the file. The fan on the laptop is going to ramp up a little bit, playing it back in original quality. While it plays it there, we can see not too much going on with the hardware utilization. Every time I flick away from it, it's going to keep pausing. Actually, let's restart that test. That was kind of an unfair test there. Let's go ahead and restart that test from scratch. We're going to let the 30-second file play, and then afterwards we're going to have a little look at the Synology's hardware utilization during the playback of that file. We're not going to do any transcoding. We're going to do that in the next stage of testing, but for now, let's let it play. It's paused. It's having a little bit of difficulty there playing that file. It is a big old file, that 100 megabits file, and it's trying to play it back in original quality, but it definitely hit a wall there during the middle of that playback. If we go to the utilization, we can see there was a spike. Presumably that was the spike when it stopped. And we can come out of that file there. So now we're going to make sure that's gone back down to something quite low, as we can see it there. Now we're going to play back the same file here on Plex. Let that play there. It's still playing it back, original quality. We can see the buffering there at the bottom. We can also see it kind of halting at that point. This may be a consistent problem, but Plex seemingly has pushed past it in a way that the Synology video player app was not able to do. Although, because this is such a heavy file, because do bear in mind this is a very heavy file, it's still struggling. I think this is around about 500 megabytes, maybe 500 or 600 meg for 30 seconds of footage, and it did seemingly struggle significantly less. So now we're going to make our way back into the test files. We're going to do another test here very quickly. This time we're going to test exactly the same file, this time as an HEVC file. That's really, really important. HEVC, otherwise known as H.265. It utilizes a greater degree of compression to playback files, but at the same time, most vendors of multimedia devices have difficulty securing patent utilization on HEVC or H.265. So generally they will always need to convert immediately. So once again, let's go ahead and play back this file. It should, in theory, immediately convert the file into high quality here on Video Station. So if we go back into Playback Quality, we can see that it's converted it automatically. We're going to let that finish its transcoding there in the background, taking advantage of hardware transcoding. Let that finish after 30 seconds, and then we're going to switch back onto the user interface of the DS920 Plus to see how much utilization happened during the course of this. We're going to let that finish up as it does there. Now we're going to flick back onto the 920. As we can see, tiny little spike, not really anything to write home about. Lovely stuff. So let's do exactly the same thing here. This time taking advantage of Plex Media Server, and again it's going to automatically transcode. As you can see there on the bottom of the screen, it's going into conversion maximum, and seeing a little spike, but we're seeing more power utilization there on the Plex media server. Not much, it's very, very small indeed, but we're seeing it in those lumps as buffering here at the base takes a little bit longer with each time. But it still managed to do it, although arguably using a little bit more hardware resources than that of VideoStation was able to do. So we're going to run one more test on a media file. We're going to go for some 4K. I do know that this NAS significantly struggles to a point of absolute failure with our heaviest file, that 400 megabits file. And if you are interested in seeing the test of the 400 megabits file, I strongly recommend you check out my Plex testing. But for now, we're going to go with the 200 megabits per second file. So we select it there, 200 megabits UHD H.264. That's the file there. Once again, we're going to play back that file on the Synology. Again, it should play original quality, but let's see if it struggles just like it did last time with our test files there. I should highlight I've not applied the Plex fix either. This is the default build of Plex without using the driver fix that I featured in another video, but as you can see, it really is struggling with this 4K file. As you can see there, we're seeing utilization, but not a vast amount. And I think VideoStation, again, a lot of this we can blame the NAS. It's not really fair for, to blame the software for not playing this file. But the reason I need to play these files is because these are both running on the same Synology NAS. Let's give up that there. We can see that it tried, it stopped there. So now let's try and play exactly the same file here on Plex. And again, Plex won't transcode. It will try and play the original file. And that's the other, I would say, slight limitation there that VideoStation presents. When it was struggling with that file, it didn't give me the option when it was struggling to change the transcoding quality. It didn't allow me to say, no, stop mucking around. You can't play it. Let me select another one. Although you can alter that option at the playback menu. I'll show you that in just a moment. But for now, even Plex is struggling with that file. But I would argue it has at least tried to play it with the tiniest, and I do mean tiniest amount of success by comparison. Now, if we go back in, and this time we go for that heavy file, so this is going to be the 400 megabits per second file. So if we find it there, where is our 400? Again, I'm sure you guys have seen it and you all think I'm blind, but for now, let's find the 400 megabit. It's in there somewhere. It's there at the top, of course it is. I'm looking at totally the wrong place. If we go back into there, we select the 400 megabit on this one. Again, this is 10-bit, this is HEVC, this is 4K 400 megabits. This is a beast. This is the file that is 1.4 gigabytes in size. This is a Herculean file for 30 seconds. That's crazy. So for now, what we're going to do with the VideoStation application, because we've got little options here, we can choose whether we want to view the media info just to double check that that's what it is and show you more about it. You can even choose to offline transcode as well in some cases, but there's lots of information there. But again, this time, as you can see, we can edit the info manually. I'm not going to bother with that. What we want to do is play back this file right now and see if it plays it. There's no option there to transcode the file before it plays. I can't even select that option there. Whereas, at least in Plex, we've got playback, ladies and gentlemen. We have playback. It's slightly, ever so slightly bumpy. And playback quality is set to high full HD because it's taking advantage of the transcoding engine. But it has managed to play back that file successfully. And I do think it has played it back noticeably better than I expected. This is a file that plays on very few Plex Media Server tests that I've done in anything lower than an i3 or an i5. Let's play that same file now, taking advantage of Plex Media Server on the same NAS. So this is Plex Media Server with hardware transcoding enabled. I'm going to make me up my CPU her option on Plex Pass. You can see the buffering there is struggling noticeably more, and ultimately I think we can say that VideoStation with its greater access to the transcoding engine, or embedded graphics to say, on the CPU as mentioned earlier, definitely was the proof in the pudding when it came to the more intense media. This is when the layers between Plex and the embedded graphics and the layers of drivers really do prove themselves. So I think I can't really call this a draw, but I'd say Plex Media Server played back the lesser files immediately and a great deal more quickly, and also has better customization for the transcoding. But it has to be said that Video Station pulled it right back by playing back some of that HEVC and HDR content a great deal better. If we go for another big HDR, we'll go for something a little beefier. What's this one here? H265. Takes 265 again. I think ultimately we can agree that right now Video Station did a better job with that denser and heavier file than that of Plex Media Server. Plex has lots of extra features and fun and services. It's certainly supported on more clients. It's certainly easier to set up across a whole wide network of devices, and it has extras, and does include extra things in that Plex Pass membership. But Synology's own application managed to find more metadata and indeed the media inside. As you can see, it's completely resequenced all of those TV shows that we were looking at earlier on. It's managed to find them all, even TV shows like this one. It's found them all and did a much, much better job of presenting that information in a far more easable, chewable, user-friendly fashion. It may feel limited sometimes. It may feel that you can't customize it or do stuff with adding more metadata sources like you can in the likes of MB and indeed Plex. And that stuff with adding an API key in order to add some of the advanced settings can be a real bummer for some, because you do need to add an API key in order to take advantage of some of those third-party services. But still, nonetheless, Video Station still stands up incredibly well as an alternative to Plex if you want to enjoy your media and you want to step away from the ever so slightly corporate-y, add-on streamy bloatware monster that Plex has sort of become in the last couple of years. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. We will be comparing Video Station with that of MB very, very soon. I think that's going to be an interesting comparison. But otherwise, if you have enjoyed this, click like. If you do want to learn more, click subscribe. And do, if you are looking for the right media server, take advantage of the free advice section at NAS Compares below. It is completely free. It's unbiased. When we won't charge anyone, we just want to help people out get the right data storage solution, be it for media or more. So take advantage, bung a message to us, use that free advice section, not the comments. It may take us an extra day or two to get in contact with you because there's a lot of messages through there, but we will get to every one of those messages. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.